Hey everybody, Shark Scrapper. Today we get to play with the Genie Lift and some heavy scrap. Come on, let's dive in. So I'm working my way through all of these power supplies that came in with the big load of computers. You may recall that the first couple that I did not have batteries in them. Most of them, it turns out, did still have the batteries in them, which is why this weighed over a ton, this pallet. So all of these still had the batteries in them. And I'm using the Genie Lift to save my back. Come on, let's dive in. I'm going to show you. Once it's lowered to about the same height as the power supply, we can scoot the power supply right onto this pallet with very little effort or stress on my back. Then we just wheel it into a position where I can get around everything. Once it's in a good working position, I raise it to a convenient working height. Now we get it open and get the heavy stuff out. With the lid out of the way, we see the two biggest or heaviest things are the battery pack and the transformers. Maybe you would call that 3, but then you'd also have to call it a lot more because there's a bunch of batteries here. So the next step is to remove the transformers and the battery pack so that the shell then is much more manageable. This also gives us a chance to play with one of our new toys. All right, so the first thing we do is get some screws here. So we get the transformers unscrewed. Now, the battery pack pulls out, but we've got to get all of these screws undone, and I'm going to unscrew a bunch of other stuff while I'm here just because, you know, that makes a lot of sense to get it all unscrewed. And then the transformers, they just had a screw on either side at one end, and the rest is just slotted in. Sometimes these get hung up, sometimes they come right out. We'll see what this one wants to do. There we go. That actually came out pretty easy. Some of them are really a lot tougher to get out. Now this says that it is 40 pounds. Which is technically a 2-person lift, but since I don't have to do a whole lot with it, it's fine the way, just put it up like that. £40, it's a nice battery load for my current scrap price, 22 cents a pound. So, you know, there's some pretty good money right there. And we just chuck this in with our tin. And I found the easiest way to get the batteries out is just flip it up like that. And then I just pull the batteries out. That's going to be a very heavy bin. We will not be lifting this milk crate up with all these batteries in it because that's going to be a couple 100 pounds worth of batteries in there. So it will get transloaded from one container into another in order to break up the weight a little bit. The other thing that I might do, because I have so many batteries, is take an empty cargo pallet, put a cargo pallet in the back of the truck, stack all the batteries on top of that, and then we can use the forklift at the non-ferrous yard to pull out all of the batteries at one time on the cargo pallet. That actually makes the most sense because we're going to have a few 100 pounds of batteries here when we're all said and done. All right, so get that out of there. That's more shred. Now we need to get these transformers out of here. The wire is fine for cutting with this guy, but I found that after a while that can get very, very tiring. That's a lot of cutting, and there's quite a few power supplies here. So we're going to try a new tool. Look at that. Is that nice? I know it's overkill, but it's a new toy, and I want to play with my new toy. Still learning where all the buttons are. Yeah, we got to get a little better at this. It's really better used on much larger pieces, of course. Much larger pieces of wire. But oh, that's very nice. Saves the hands. A little bit awkward for this kind of work, but you get the idea what that can do for you. We're going to play around with it some more here in a minute. Now, of course, we can always just do this. But Santa Claus brought me that nice tool, and I wanted to play with it. Now that we've removed the batteries and the two transformers, it is much lighter and manageable to carry back to the operating table. Get you out the way. All right, now let's get some things unscrewed here. That's a real nice gold finger card. Some of them still had these, these are network communication cards for the power supplies to talk to the whole network. So we get the battery off of here. And I found the easiest thing to do with these guys is to just twist them off, because the screws can be somewhat problematic. So we have a little piece of tin here. We might still get the screws out, we'll see. Nah. So we'll just bust those off like that. There we go. Now we have a nice gold finger card for board sort. Of course, there's some stuff here you could depopulate if that's what you do. Flat pack ICs, oscillators, some BGAs, some MLCCs. Nothing on the back here. It's really not a great card for depopulating, but it's a perfectly good gold finger card. Most of these cables are just clips, so they come out pretty easy. And let's play with our toy again. So you can see that, you know, this isn't exactly the best thing for these smaller pieces of cable. But for the larger cable that I get from my electrician, this is going to be a very useful tool. And it just pulls down on it, and look at that. Sweet! Number 2 insulated. Don't put your finger in there. That's just a ferrous block. Put that in with the small metal bits, and more number 2 insulated. My yard does not require that I cut off the ends. Many yards do. And if you're ever not sure, I had somebody left a comment, was arguing with me about some of my power supplies did not have copper in them. I'm like, well, it sure looks like copper to me, so. Wire wraps get in the way. There we go. More number 2. This wire presents some interesting challenges because it's borderline. It's borderline 1 and 2 insulated. So what I've been doing is keeping this separate, the longer pieces. Oops. And when I take it to the yard, this will all be in a separate container, and they can make the assessment there. And then these I've just been throwing in with my little metal bits when I cut them off. The shorter pieces, where are they? So these shorter pieces like this, I'm not messing with those. I'm just throwing that whole thing in with my number 2 insulated copper wire. Yeah, you know, it's kind of a balance there, trying to figure out what's the right answer with those wires that are on the cusp of one or the other. Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna bother taking that off because it's just gonna go in shred anyway. So that's just going to go back in here and go with the shred. All right, now, in order to get this out, we have to cut this off. Ooh, let's play. Let's play. Still getting used to where the switches are. Look at that. That's kind of a heavy tool though. So again, it was primarily intended to use with the larger cables that I get from my electrician. And we're going to have to cut this wire to get it through this feed through, because it doesn't like to just pull through. Let's see if we can get a good grip on it. Maybe I can pull it through easier. There we go. There we go. All right. Yeah, look at that nice piece of copper right there. That's a fuse. So now we get those off. I think I've shown you one of these before. It was a while back. All right, so those little chunks of brass, pop those out. Now we have this piece of copper, and it goes all the way through. So you can see there's a little thin part that's inside the ceramic. If too much current goes through, that's going to burn out. And we have a nice chunk of copper there. And just imagine some engineer calculating how thick this piece of wire had to be, both width and thickness, for this fuse to work the way they wanted it to. This piece of metal and that comes out pretty easy, and the fans come out really easy. We just give them a cup, because this, for some reason, this is pretty brittle plastic on these fans. And there we have a little motor. For my yard, it's a little motor. And then that'll go back in with the metal. Who wants to see the toy work again? I do. We don't have to go all the way out with this. We can just slide it right in. That is so cool. I'm easily amused. All right, we need to get all of this stuff out of here now. So this is a nice convenient chunk of everything together. Sometimes it comes out real easy. Sometimes It needs a little convincing, like this one. And you got a couple options for how to clean this up. Because essentially all this is sockets. Now, if you want, you can even dig in here and get the brass out of those sockets. And then I'm just going to chuck all this in with my number 2. Although there was, where is it? No, this one didn't have it. Some of them have, well, actually this one might. So let's see here. Let me show you this piece. So that's solid core, relatively thick core relative to the insulation. So I'm going to throw that in with the number 1. There's another piece here. All right, now this piece out of here, and we have to get the ground wire disconnected. Plug. That's gonna just go back in with the shred. Some more insulated. This was the tray that that connector board was in, and I found that the best thing with this is just give it a little love tap. If you're new to my channel or you haven't heard me explain this before, my yard allows me to put ribbon wire in with my number 2 insulated with connectors on. Your yard may have a different grade for this. They may call it low grade. You know, who knows what they're going to call it. Just check with your yard. And then some of the ribbon wire, not this stuff, because I could see the pins for this were not gold plated, but if this came off of gold plated pins, then chances are there's gold plated connectors inside of that. So you could cut that off and put that in with your gold plated connectors. For me, number 2 insulated. There's a plate in here that it gets in the way when I'm trying to get the board out, so I always disconnect it. This is the stuff you learn when you do a lot of these, as I've been doing. And then we have this piece of wire here, and it goes to a board that is a button action and a light board. So, you know, there were lights here to tell you what was going on. There's all the little LEDs, a little piece of rubber over the buttons. This is a really low-grade chunk of wire. I don't put this in with my insulated wire. I put it in with my small metal bits. This board, because we have an IC and we have LEDs, I'm going to put this in with my mid-grades. Get back in there. It didn't want to go in with the mid-grades, apparently. We have a little ferrous block, yeah. And then this can just all just stay in here because it's just going to go in with the tin shred. All right, now we have a couple of keeper screws here that need to come out. I think it was just 2, yeah. And then the board slides backwards. There's pins, retaining pins. The board slides backwards and then lifts out. Just like that. In order to get these wires out and get as much of that wire as I can, I'm just going to push the plates out of the way and then get in here and cut. So I'm throwing that in with my number 2 insulated. And then, because of the way these broke, I can throw this in. This is aluminum, so I could put this in with my breakage, or I could try to break off the MOSFETs, which are copper. I don't know if you can see the copper there. Copper heat sinks on them. Or you can just leave it on whatever you want to do. This board, if you really love to depopulate, you got some things here that could be of interest, right? Because this board is a little confusing. Right now, it's just a low-grade power board. Absolutely no question, low-grade power board. Caps, big old toroids here with copper, some transformers, some solenoid switches, more caps, but there is some upgrade potential here. You could cut right along here and then remove that transformer, and that board could go definitely mid-grade, perhaps even into your peripherals. So yeah, you could put that in with your peripheral high grades once you remove that after you've cut it along there. Now the rest of this is, there's nothing you can do. The rest of this is just power board, low-grade power board. But some people like to go after the solenoid switches because they want to get at the copper and might be a little silver or gold contact inside there. Some people like to cut off those transformers and put those in with their small motor bucket, copper motor bucket. Other people like to get the toroids off to get the copper off the toroids. And then this resistor here might have gold inside. You know what? Let's have fun. Let's play around a little bit. I've seen on some channels when they cut these open that it's gold plated inside. I'm going to use these. No, you know what we're going to do? We're going to very carefully cut that open. Come on with me. Well, I'm not seeing any gold plating inside of there. What I am seeing is like some sort of ceramic. I've got some copper. So, I don't know. I've seen people that have opened these up and there's been gold plating inside of them. Not this one, though. Well, since we're cutting stuff, here, let me show you how I would cut this board for an upgrade. And I recommend a dust mask as well as eye protection with this. In order to cut the board, you have to cut, with the flat side up. Otherwise, you got all the stuff in the way. So I'm going to mark the cut points so I know what line to follow. And then I'm going to reposition the board so that I can cut it. Sometimes there's even some convenient trace lines on the board that you can follow. In this case, I'm just following up the line that I started, and then I'll come in from the other angle where I also notched it. All right, so now we have, I'll take that off, and we'll put that in with our peripherals. Peripheral high grades, and then here's our low grade board. You can see the copper layers from where I cut. Now, is this worth doing? You know, I was doing it for demonstration purposes. I do not normally do this unless it's a real quick, easy cut. I normally don't spend the time to do this. I just got too much stuff I'm doing. That's just too much fun. Well, I got some new bits, so I'm going to put those up on the Amazon site in case you didn't get new bits for the holidays and you need them. I'll have them for you. Doesn't take, I mean, it only takes 2 of these screws to really hold this lid down. And we're ready for the next one. All right, well, I'm gonna finish up these power supplies. I wanna get them done today. And that way I could get all the batteries and everything in the next non-ferrous run, which will be the first non-ferrous run of 2024 because they're not open for the rest of the year here. So I hope everybody had a wonderful 2023, and I look forward to seeing you in 2024, which is gonna be a big year of change for Shark Scrapper. More on that later on. Have a great day, y'all. And don't forget all the links so that you can get more of this awesome content.